Zeke Miller is a CBSN political contributor and a White House reporter for the Associated Press, and he joins me now. Zeke, this is a high-stakes trip. What are the most important issues President Trump needs to hit on with these leaders in Asia?
Well, obviously, North Korea is sort of a national security perspective, is what the White House and national security officials say is the most important, most pressing issue for the president to take up, saying the situation there with North Korea's very advanced nuclear program, its ballistic missile development, is not something that can be, there's no more road to kick the can down on, is something that General McMaster has said a few times now over the last few weeks. So that's certainly a big item on the agenda. Also, this is the president's first trip to Asia since he canceled the Trans-Pacific Partnership that was negotiated under his predecessor. So the issues of trade and economic issues more broadly will be discussed in front and center for the president there. And then from and then there will be all the other ancillary issues. If he does have that one-to-one with Vladimir Putin, all the issues from Russia will again be injected in the conversation, and also the bilateral agreements and relationships with other countries like China, like Vietnam, like Japan, South Korea, where the president has at times clashed with some of those leaders. How will the president sort of handle those relationships in that context? We'll see all of that over the next week and a half.
As you know, Zeke, there are so many State Department positions that remain unfilled right now, almost double digits, including some ambassadorships. Here's what the president had to say about that earlier.
Don't need all the people that they want. Don't forget, I'm a business person, and I tell my people, well, you don't need to fill slots, don't fill them. But we have some people that I'm not happy with their thinking process.
Assistant Secretary of State, you're not getting rid of that position.
But let me tell you, the one that matters is me. I'm the only one that matters, because when it comes to it, that's what the policy is going to be. You've seen that. You've seen it strongly.
The president may suggest that it only matters what he decides and what he does, and clearly, as the commander-in-chief, it does. But, Zeke, the ability to have undersecretaries of state, ambassadors in these diplomatic posts certainly allows the United States a stronger footing when it comes to negotiations. So how do these vacancies impact U.S. diplomacy abroad?
Well, I think this trip in some ways will be a real key test of that. So far, we've seen a lot of pomp and circumstance, a lot of sort of focus and emphasis on protocol, what the president is going to be doing, who he's going to be meeting with, and all of those things. But we haven't heard a lot about from the White House is the deliverables. Those are the things that, in other presidencies, when all these trips happen, those don't get hashed out in the room. They're always hashed out in advance, by the same people the president's saying he doesn't need. They're the people who draft the statement, the joint statements with the foreign counterpart, or at those summits, negotiate whatever the American objective there is. So it'll be interesting to see after each of these stops what deliverables the president has, because if he doesn't have too many of them, and right now the White House really isn't sort of hinting that there are going to be too many of them at all, that is an indication that maybe he does need more help than he's letting on.
So, Zeke, what do you make of the president of the United States undermining his own Secretary of State? He's done it in the past. Just recently, when he was asked about Rex Tillerson staying on the job, he said, "We'll see." How does that play into Tillerson's ability to negotiate with foreign counterparts?
It certainly doesn't help him, and the broader issue that everyone in the U.S. government faces right now is that overseas, foreign leaders, diplomats don't really know how to read this president and this administration. They're looking at the tweets, they're looking at the public statements, and they're seeing one thing, and they're hearing a very different thing when they talk in private to people like Secretary Tillerson, Secretary Mattis, Chairman Dunford, General McMaster, and others in the administration who, it's sort of a good cop, bad cop is sort of the most generous way of reading that, or just a sign of disorganization. So it's hard, certainly Tillerson has been undercut by the president, though, they try to there's a sort of a push of here to sort of argue that there's some sort of broader strategy to that. We haven't, again, seen the deliverables there to say that, this is a strategy that is working, but certainly there are a lot of questions that foreign leaders and foreign diplomats have about this administration, about this White House, about Secretary Tillerson and his effectiveness that really don't have many answers to right now.
Zeke, let me ask you about the possibility of something else. The president may meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin while abroad. Certainly, there are very important issues these two leaders need to address. And so this meeting, should it happen, would be important diplomatically, politically. But from the optics, Zeke, I wonder what it means for the optics, and why hasn't anyone at the White House confirmed this meeting?
it's not unusual when you have summits like this, where they don't telegraph that there's going to be a pull aside or not. It's generally what they call is a sort of pull aside or a quick bilateral on the side of a summit. That's not unusual. That happened in the Obama administration, happened in the Bush administration before, where these weren't always, the schedule is always kind of fluid in these venues. But for the president, the optics are, given the Russia investigation, the domestic politics surrounding Russia here, it's an interesting moment for the president. Not to whether or not to take the meeting, because it's the role of the president to sit down with foreign leaders. It's how he takes the meeting. How does he conduct himself? What does he say? What does he say about Russian interference in the 2016 election, which is very well documented now. We've seen all the Facebook ads. We've seen communications. We've seen indictments and things like that. So what does the president say about all of those things? Is he still reflexively defensive as he's been in the past on those issues? Or does he try to move past it and accomplish things on sort of a strategic basis with Vladimir Putin? That's one of the things we'll be looking for.
Zeke, as you know, here in the United States, Robert Mueller's special investigation continues. The president has called it a disgrace. He's also been tweeting. He's been engaged in his back and forth with Senator Elizabeth Warren. He's been talking about the Justice Department looking into Hillary Clinton and the Democrats. And at one point, Elizabeth Warren tweeted back to the president, "You might think that your tweets are cute, at real Donald Trump, but they won't stop Mueller's investigation or keep your people out of jail. The DNC shouldn't play favorites, but that's a whole lot different from illegally conspiring with Russia. The FBI knows the difference."
Yeah, we've seen quite the tweet storm from the president and from some of his critics today, as he's going to Asia, tweeting from the plane on the way there about a range of subjects. I mean, the president all the way through this has been pretty clear about how he's frustrated with the Mueller investigation. He's frustrated that Mueller was appointed to begin with after he fired Jim Comey. That he believes that Democrats should be investigated as well for some sort of alleged crimes, or in this case, when it came to the coordination between the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee, something that even Donna Brazile, who was the one sort of blowing the whistle on this and maybe even exaggerating those claims to sell her own book, but she doesn't say it's criminal. She says it's potentially unethical. So the president saying the Department of Justice should investigate that. It seems to be a lot sort of just trying to sort of shift the conversation away from his own questions with Robert Mueller. A little bit of misdirection from the president there.
But Zeke, to be fair, and the president has surrogates out there raising this issue. In fact, Donna Brazile found proof that the 2016 Democratic primary was rigged in Secretary Clinton's favor. The president may be trying to change the narrative on the investigation, but there are surrogates of President Trump out there, including the president of the United States, who want Hillary Clinton investigated. They want the DNC investigated. And they've been banging the drum on this Uranium One deal and saying that you and I, the mainstream media, the liberal mainstream media, is not covering it. What do our viewers need to know about what Donna Brazile is suggesting, the Uranium One deal, and how it relates to the investigation or lack thereof of the Justice Department?
Well, I mean, the top line in all of this really is how unusual and striking to see the President of the United States trying to direct from afar the investigations of the Department of Justice and the FBI. That's not how this is done, certainly not of political opponents. There are processes in place, and the White House is, will say privately that the president's not trying to direct an investigation. He's not giving an order. He's just sort of voicing his own opinion. But those color decisions down the chain of command often. So that's sort of the top line. And then on those two specifics, what Donna Brazile is saying, nothing there. Even she says was illegal. It may have been unethical. Certainly, Hillary Clinton was always the front runner in that primary. Bernie Sanders, at the time when that agreement was reached, wasn't even a registered Democrat. And then in the case of Uranium One, that's that's a deal that's been under scrutiny by Congress, by various other federal investigators for years. Nothing has come up about that would indicate criminal culpability or liability there yet. I mean, it's one thing to call for an investigation. The Congress is calling for, say they want to hold committee hearings, but for the president to try to direct law enforcement is something very striking, and it's hard to it's important not to lose sight of just how big of a deviation that is from the norms.
Well, the president is lamenting that fact, Zeke. As you know, he said in an interview, the saddest thing is because I'm president of the United States, I'm not supposed to be involved with the Justice Department. I'm not supposed to be involved with the FBI. For a lot of people, and clearly these were people who don't support President Trump's policies, to them that sounds like an authoritarian who wishes that they could control the courts and the justice system.
That could be how some people are taking it. Certainly, some of these norms and procedures are put in place to prevent that sort of abuse of power. Also, it's the president. Is sometimes very candid in those interviews where he is sort of just reflecting, lamenting, and how he used to have these freedoms outside the White House, and the White House is, but to a certain extent, constricting it. It limits what he's allowed to say and do. He maybe less so than previous presidents. He's sort of testing those boundaries, but there are things that he can't necessarily influence from within the administration, and he's not always sort of the quote unquote presidential type. But certainly he has to be more presidential in the White House than he was on the campaign trail or when he was a private citizen, when he can sort of make accusations or call for investigations willy-nilly and didn't actually have to sort of back it up and have to, sort of get, feel the scrutiny that he does now as president.
And lastly, Zeke, the president this morning said he doesn't remember much from his March 2016 meeting with campaign foreign advisor. One advisor who was at that meeting was George Papadopoulos, who has pleaded guilty in the Mueller probe. He told the president he could help arrange a meeting between then candidate Trump and President Putin. What's the significance of this development and the president's response?
Well, this meeting is now sort of at the center of the Mueller probe after Papadopoulos pleaded guilty earlier this month, or earlier last month, I should say. Now, sort of what the president's response to being offered to sort of have that meeting brokered on his behalf with Vladimir Putin. What came of it? Were other campaign officials in contact with the Russians? Those are all the things that Mueller is looking at, and the president saying he doesn't remember it is striking because it's not necessarily, it's not a denial that this came up, because also that account has been corroborated by other people in the room. It's also not the president saying nothing ever came of it. It's the president just going with the sort of what lawyers may advise him to say, just don't remember, because that's the way you don't get yourself in trouble. Also of note there, the president in the past has frequently bragged about his memory, so it is an interesting contrast.
He does have one of the world's great memories. That's a paraphrase of what the president once said. Zeke Miller, as always, my friend, we thank you very much.
Thank you.